Welcome to this week's episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network, sponsored by CVC Success Group and hosted every week when we get all three of us on here with myself, Sheryl, and Brandy Biswell. So I want to welcome you here, just like every week when we present this show. What we're trying to do is give you ideas, concepts, proven things that you put into use in your business. Okay. So hopefully that's the plan. And today we have something that perhaps you're not ready for today, but there may come as your business grows or you go into an exit plan and it's time for you to turn into a silent investor who owns the business where someone is taking care of you for this. And what we're looking at is when this time comes to move someone into an office manager's position, a operations manager, or even a general manager. Do you promote from within, or do you do a search to bring in an outside person? And there's validity with both of these. So, Brandy, what's your thoughts about the value of today's presentation?
I think it's going to be great. So often we see people that promote from within, which there's nothing wrong with that. I actually prefer to do that. However, they think that what makes someone a successful CSR is going to make them a successful office manager, or what makes someone a successful tech is going to make them a successful director of operations. And it's simply not true. They're not the same skill sets.
That's exactly right. Sheryl, what's your input on this subject matter for the day? The topic we'll be discussing.
I like the idea of hiring from within, but sometimes you don't have the quality for the leadership that you need. You have the superstars, but not the leadership abilities. And so I think at times you need to bring them from without. I think it just depends on your workforce. Who will they accept also?
Okay, well, good enough. Stick around with us. We'll be right back and we'll get into the meat of today's topic, which is should you promote from within or do a search and bring in a leader from outside? So, anyway, this is a very interesting subject. And so you'll know one of the things that the three of us do, in fact, we just did this morning, believe it or not, is we actually work with clients and conduct interviews with prospective people who are considered for leadership positions. We have done this with both interviewing outside people and also promoting people from within. So, first of all, you got to understand that's got to be a really scary thing for an applicant to face the three of us and possibly more in an interview process. What are they going to go through? In fact, so you'll know, in order to keep it calmer and not to upset them, these two ladies never let me go first. They start, and then I have my questions, and a lot of it's based on what I've heard. So we have a process that we follow in these joint interviews that I think is very, very positive. But here's the question. Do you go inside and do you promote from within, or do you do a search of outside people? Now, I can remember with a lot of organizations such as police departments, fire departments, other such for years, the process was you worked up through the ranks. You started out as a policeman walking a beat, possibly, or whatever is in your area, and advanced into that. Maybe you went into a detective position, and eventually you worked through the ranks as an officer, and you worked all the way up to the chief. In fact, my dad was a policeman, and that was how he moved to being a lieutenant, was his experience in the police department, and that was natural. But today, usually you see these departments are now doing searches for outside. And I know of one organization that actually recently hired an executive director. And I just found out from talking to a person on that board that they conducted a search using a professional search a search company to locate the right guy. And it seems like they have really located a super individual to fill this role. So to get this rolling and rocking today, Cheryl, let's go to you first. What is your thoughts on this process? What do we do? Do we look inside? Do we look outside? And what Brandy said, you can be a great tech. I want to clarify that. You can have great people on your team that when they're moved into a leadership position, be aware they can fail. But you can also have failure if you hire from outside. And we're going to go over that today, where the failure comes from often. So, Cheryl, let's start with you. What's your thoughts on this topic?
Well, especially in the industry that deal the most with, and in a lot of other blue collar industries, I think a lot of it is the knowledge that that person's going to come with or come without. Yes, they can be taught, but they would have no intricate knowledge of, and I'm just going to use the chimney service business because that's what we're familiar with at this point. So there's a huge learning curve if you hire from without, more so than if you're hiring for an office or a management over an office, because that's a little bit easier to do because you don't have the damage that can be done in a service company. So I believe it's different for different companies. I think you have to look at your company. Will people accept a stranger? Will they work with them? Or will they have a worse problem dealing with one of their co-employees?
Okay, good enough. Brandy, what's your thought process?
I have mostly hired from in, and my rationale for that is I know the person, I know their strengths, I know their weaknesses. I trust them, and trust is a huge part of it for me. When I bring somebody in from the outside, they may have all the leadership skills, but I don't have the trust in them yet. However, promoting a CSR to an office manager or a technician to a director of operations, typically they've never coached another employee. It's hard to work with somebody where you've been at the same level and then now you're a superior to them. According to Forbes magazine, I read this stat, 70% of team level engagement is based upon the manager's ability to lead. So 70% is based on that manager's ability to lead. And these are skills that we have to teach. Nobody's born a leader. That whole born a leader thing doesn't exist. You have to be taught these skills. And so if you promote somebody into this position because they're great on the phone, they're charismatic, they book a lot of jobs, and then you promote them into office manager thinking that they're going to be the best office manager, but you give them no office manager training, you're setting them up for failure.
Yeah, I agree. So, Cheryl, one of the things that all three of us firmly believe in, and is one of your areas of expertise, is that we got to have a person with the right behavior patterns, what we call the DISC assessment, where they fit into that role. So, how important is this, no matter if we are interviewing inside or outside people, how important is that interior behavior patterns? What does this tell you as an assessor about this person whenever you review their DISC?
Well, basically, I know if they're able to talk to other people, but more important than that, I know if they can listen to other people, because to lead, you have to listen. And so with that, I also see their trust factors. I see basically the communication to me is the most important thing. Are you able to communicate on a level that works with a lot of people? You can't be extremely high in a lot of things because then you rule, and you rule by demanding. So there's a level of where I have to be real careful of recommending somebody for that position because I know they're going to be a dictator instead of a leader. And on the other hand, I know also if they're going to let their people run their business. So to me, the DISC assessment and a lot of the other assessments out there work great in pinpointing a person that has the personality. They might not have the knowledge. I'm going to add that fact. I can't tell if they've got the knowledge, but I can tell if they have the personality to work in that part.
Got you covered. So, Brandy, usually when we're doing our group interviews, which means it would be the three of us and also the client, and sometimes other people that are on the client's leadership team is involved in these. And you're the person that we have go first, and you always come in with a prepared list of questions for these people. Are the questions the same for both of these sides?
No, they are not. If I have somebody coming in that is coming in already to the organization and they have that previous leadership experience, then the questions are going to be more geared to how much do they know about leadership? What is their leadership style? If we're taking somebody that's been in a CSR or tech position and promoting them, then I'm going to give them a lot of case scenarios to see where their current leadership skill is and where we need to go with it. They're not going to know their leadership style because they haven't been in that position before.
Okay. And Cheryl, you likewise have prepared questions. As a rule, you may be picking up some from Brandy's questions, which I do a lot of times, is I'll hear things that will actually cause me to put together a question geared for what I'm hearing from the questions that the two of you ask. So, what are you trying to determine? And are your questions the same if it was a promotion within or an outside hire?
Mine are going to be much closer to the same than Brandy's, because where Brandy deals with the interim of the business, I'm dealing with the person that I'm looking at on the interview. I want to know I want to know whether they can listen. I want to know whether they have the knowledge of how to react as a person, not particularly as a leader. Because I'll get the answer if you're a leader, or I'll also get the answer if you're a person that cannot lead with the questions that I ask, because I'm concerned about the business, yes, but I'm more concerned about putting the wrong person in the right seat.
Okay. So when we look at this, let's talk failures. And often what we see is we've hired it, and I call this a mid-level manager, where the mid-level manager fails. So Brandy, you've seen this. Cheryl, you've seen this happen. So Cheryl, let me start with you. Whenever you see that a mid-level manager that has been hired and has the right stuff, whether it's a promotion from within or outside, why do they fail?
A lot of times it's their insecurity. I noticed that a lot of times. Other times it was their past. They're bringing, I'm going to use baggage. We've noticed people that have been, and I'm not just going to I'll use service because that's prevalent right now. If they've been in the service and they're used to more of a commanding situation, they've got to be very, very careful to drop that commanding and become a negotiator and a person that works it out. Or otherwise, if they have never done anything like that, are you able to command and explain to people, tell them what they have to do? Can you hold someone accountable? And we notice that comes a lot of times as the failure. It's people not having the ability to hold others accountable for what they do.
And can you see that in a DISC assessment if that behavior personality is going to be that person, or is that something you can't pick up from the assessment?
You can get it to a point. There's a finite thing of the way we do, because even though you have your DISC, your DISC, your four commandings, you have a area where you transition. You're always your core, but you can transition to be what you need to be, such as you're an extremely high D. We're all extremely high Ds. Let's just get that over with. You deal by commanding. I deal by persuasion, and Brandy rules by being nice. Actually, she does all the right things for her employees.
See, Jerry, somebody thinks I'm nice.
Yeah.
She can be a little testy at times, but we all, even though our discs are real similar, we do the same things, but in different ways. So we have to be careful where you or Brandy cannot convince somebody to do something or make it happen. I can, or you can when we can't. So a lot of it's in the owner of the company and how they associate with this person that they have brought up.
Yep, great question. So, Brandy, let's take the same question to you. When we have seen failures of mid-level managers, that will be an operations guy. It could even be your office manager. It could be a general manager. What is the reason that you see that so many people fail in the position?
The person coming in from the outside, I think one of the most common things I see is they came in and they failed to build that relationship with the team. Now, we're not talking about corporate America. If you have a span of 400 people under you, you're never going to know them all. But we're talking about usually smaller to mid-sized blue collar businesses where it's important that if you're coming in, you've got to first gain that trust and respect of the team before you're going to be able to be successful. And you know, Jerry, I'm huge on an onboarding plan that lays that out very clearly so that the first several weeks are spent nothing but building that relationship with the team. If it's an internal person that we're promoting, sometimes it's the case of maybe they wanted the title, but they didn't actually know that they would not be a good person to give coaching, that they're not comfortable with that. They're not comfortable giving performance reviews. They're not comfortable with doing payroll and all of the office work that comes along with it.
Okay. So, when you see this, do people follow your onboarding process? Because yes, you're putting out, let's face it, you and I and Sheryl, we give people proven processes to follow. So whenever the onboarding process is not followed, does failure usually result?
Every single time.
Okay, so lack of having an onboarding process, no matter if it's interior or exterior, is going to be a part of the problem. Because if it's an outside person, they've got to learn the business skills, the technical skills, what's involved. And if it's an interior person, they've got to follow an onboarding process to build their leadership skills. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so that's one of Brandy's, and I'm going to give you one of my feelings of why people fail in a managed position. And this is a lack of accountability and a failure to inspect for what you expect by the owners of the company. In other words, I often see people and they say, okay, you're the GM, there's your office, adios, you take care of it. Is that process going to fail, Brandy?
Yeah, and it goes back to the same thing I said. There's no formal onboarding. There's no route or path to follow.
Okay.
It's just here's the office. Good luck.
Yeah, it kind of goes along with my Donner Party story of if you don't follow the path, you don't follow this trail that's been blazed for you, and you decide to take shortcuts, just like the Donner Party story, it's not going to be a happy ending. You're going to go down in history for something you probably don't want to be held accountable to. So, Sheryl, what's your other thoughts on this? How, if I was going to hire from inside, and I got a great, let's just take the operations guy. And I've got this tech. He is a fabulous salesperson. He is a great inspector. He's a great technician. What am I looking for this guy to become this great leader in my company? What are you looking at?
Number one, you have to look at someone that does not impose what he can do on everyone else. In other words, I did it, so you can do it. I think that's the worst thing they can do. But you've got to dig to and get into a person that's willing to give up that extra time and maybe even extra money in the interim until they learn the skills. And I think that's the bigger problem from hiring within. You have got to find out that they have those leadership abilities, and you're going to have to train them. Just as if you train somebody coming from outside, you have to train them leadership plus skills. So the people from within a lot of times can help the people under them a lot more on the technical part. But can they help them with the personality part? Or are they too used to that peer on peer relationship? Mm-hmm. So we can sit here and banner this all day, but I don't think there's a real answer in any particular company unless you've got that perfect person within that has some of the leadership skills or they're willing to learn.
Okay. And like I said, it's amazing because I have watched people that have moved through the ranks and they have become phenomenal leaders. Okay. I was really happy yesterday afternoon. One of my clients was promoted a person into this position. Now, this was a year of training and coaching to get him into this position. We saw the right stuff, but he was very willing and open to be coached and trained. So, Brandy, same question to you. We're doing an interview, and we did one. Like I said, we did these this morning. So this is a very fresh thing for us. So when we have an existing team member, what are you looking for in this person, man or woman, to be this exceptional leader?
Number one, they have to already be respected by the other employees, because if they're not going to be successful in that position. There's no going back. So they have to already have the respect of their colleagues. Number two, I'm looking for somebody that in their current position, they're always coming up with new ideas or new ways of doing things. They're always, coming to me saying, hey, can we try this? Or, hey, I think it would work better that way. So somebody that's already has that initiative and that drive prior to being in that position.
Okay. So, Brandy, let's turn this around because in your past career, you were actually a young lady that was asked to move into a leadership position with the people that you worked with. And when you looked at this, what did you see as the challenge to Brandy to be successful in this leadership role?
That is the hardest one to do, is when you are a peer of someone and then you become their superior, their manager, because this may be the same people that you've been at their house for parties or you go to dinner with them after work, and now you're having to give them a performance improvement plan, or worst case scenario, fire them. And if that person on the other side isn't able to let go of that friendship part and see that, hey, this is the business side of it, it's just a recipe for disaster.
And one of the things I look at is a person who's promoted from within. The people that you will be leading probably know every weakness that you have. Okay. They have seen you, they have seen your failures, they have seen your emotions, they have seen you lose your temper, they have seen you. And to me, that's one of the hardest aspects is how do you get past this? So, Sheryl, question for you. What about the person? Do we look at the age? Let's say we have a great person who has come on in the company or he's applying and he's got every qualification. It's just going to be, it just looks like it's the perfect fit. But this person's in their early 20s and they're going to be managing workers that could be 10, 20, or 30 years older. How does age come into this equation?
It depends how they have mingled with their peers in the past. Are the peers looking at them as a 20-year-old? Are they looking at him as an inferior person in the business? Or does they see him as one that's there to help them when they need to be helped, to assist with what answers they need to find? Has he already become part of an operations manager? Has he stepped into that arena slightly on his own? Even though he's not, has he shown that he can do it? Now, if you take a 20-year-old that come on with just, I'm 20 and I'm smart and here we go, it's not going to work. But it's the same way with an older person. They have to have that respect before they go in. You do not gain it after you get there. You've got to have it before you enter. So if you have paid the piper before you moved into this position, I think it's an easy transition. But whether you're 20 or 50, but I think you have to have the peers' approval and have shown them already that, hey, you do these things. I'm here early. I'm here late. I work hard. I help you when you need helping. I do what I need to do. And I think that's where it comes. We always assume that this person's 20 I started stuff at a young age when women were not allowed to do things, especially in construction site. I wasn't accepted for a couple weeks, but it didn't take long before I buried my feet. So yes, a young person can enter a field and they can own a company or they can run a company. And so I I look at age as a relativity because I know some older people that I would not put in a leadership position.
Gotcha. So, Brandy, going back into your history, you were a younger person who was engaged, who was entertained, who was requested to supervise people. And I'm assuming some of these nurses you were looking at were older than you. How did you view this from your point of view as an applicant would?
I was that young 21-year-old that was a charge nurse and had nurses working for me that were 40 years, 50 years, 60 years old. I think why I was successful though is I didn't act like I knew it all, and I did quite the opposite. I would go to them and say, "Hey, I've only been on this unit for a year. You've been here for 10 years. How would you handle this situation?" Or I've never encountered this. And so I was more than willing to admit my weaknesses, and go to them for help, but then also take that authoritative position and help them when needed. So I think that that's why I was successful. But I will say, Jerry, when we interview for companies, because we also are helping just interview for just the CSR, just the technician position, not the management position. That is one thing that we actually ask if we do have, like, maybe we have a general manager that's really young and we have somebody interviewing that's older. That's one of the questions that we'll ask is, are you comfortable being managed or led by someone who's much younger than you? Because I've had a tech before quit, and that was his beef. He didn't like being managed by people that were younger than him. So it also depends on the people on the other side.
Gotcha. So, Cheryl, let's take this back to your side a minute because this is actually what you deal with is in your hiring and recruiting and the interview processes that you put people through in the assessment. Do we want a leader who is a mimic twin of us as the owner, or do we want someone who is a different personality to balance us?
I'm looking for a different personality all the time. If you're hiring another you, you're going to have exactly the same problems that you have right now. You're going to have exactly the same issues. It's not going to be any different. You need that counterbalance. And so I think that's what works so well especially when we're interviewing for management positions. We're looking for the opposites. We're looking for the person that will actually, if he does, if you're the same, you always agree. You've got to have that disagreement to improve things, or they stay as they are. I mean, it's really hard when you hire yourself, and we tend to do that. I have companies over and over and over that are hiring, and I'm talking about for all positions, CSRs, techs, managers. They're hiring for someone just like themselves because that's where they're comfortable. These are positions you need to step into the uncomfortable.
Okay, got you covered. And there's a really good comment by Brad Smith. There should only be two kinds of people that work for any company: the people that do a task and the people that help those people do the task. All employees should be leaders, in my opinion. And I would agree with that 100%. And that's one of the things that we've got to train in our people is the leadership skills. And that's where a lot of companies, in fact, we've got a really good friends. I've never met them. This has been an electronic and phone conversations Brandy has, who is Mike and Rhea Story. And this is one of the key things that they talk about is blue collar leadership. And they go into companies across the country not to speak to the leadership teams. Rather, they're speaking to the workforce itself to instill leadership. And these people are so highly respected. They've actually spoken, believe it or not, at Yale University, which that's a pretty high honor to go into somewhere like Yale or Harvard or something like that to express what is going on. So, Brandy, from your aspect, is hiring people in these leadership positions, is this something that most company owners can do alone, or do they really need someone to assist them through this process and to provide other opinions?
I think the assistance is helpful because the owner's going to come in with biases, with certain biases. So I think if you can bring in outside parties that don't have those biases, that have never worked with the candidates that are interviewing, so that you can get that very objective view, I think it can be very helpful. And I wanted to go back to, I believe it was Brad's comment. When I teach my CSR classes, that's one of the questions that I ask. I say, okay, who in this room is leaders? Raise your hand. And ultimately, maybe a third of the class will raise their hand. And I say, wrong, you're all leaders. So I thought that was a great point that he brought up.
Yeah, I think it was too, because it is key. And like I said, this is part of the process. We can teach skills if someone is willing to learn, but someone has got to have leadership skills. And the leadership skills, yes, they're not born with them, but it is what they develop in life and as they go through life. And how do they understand? I honestly believe you cannot lead anyone till you understand them. If we look at political candidates, what they've got to do is they have to understand, to win, the majority of the population, the majority of the voters. And as we look at that, that's exactly what wins or loses in political elections for leadership within our country. But again, it's a really involved process. And here's the whole thing. You may be a small company today. You may be a one person company today. But if you have a plan to grow the company, then these positions are going to become available. And what you've got to do is you got to build your org chart. That's your organization, like our friend Al Levy teaches, where it shows how do you assemble to this. And this is where we've got to learn the processes. That's why really next week, I'm looking so forward to next week, because I'm going to an event next week called Vertical Track. And I've got the honor of being one of the speakers on this program, which is a really high honor for me. I'm really looking forward to this. But part of it is, and I've recommended to others to go to this, because you can see how the path has been cut. And then you've got a trail that you follow. So you've got to get into this, because hiring a bad leader that goes sour, Brandy, is that going to turn out well?
No, and it's so demotivating for all of the staff, for the entire team.
It is. And that's what happened. And Brad has placed another one. Some of the best leadership training I've ever had was taught by the janitor. Everyone in the place was a leader. And Brad, you're making some excellent comments today to this. So I want to thank you. So, Sheryl, what's your final thoughts on this for today?
Well, a thought plus something that happened yesterday. I think that maybe people that are hiring can understand. I was looking at a 25, 26-year-old gentleman. I was interviewing him for a tech, but I saw so many leadership abilities in him. During the interview, I just asked if if he had ever thought about working his way up the system to being a leader. And he said, I've thought about it, but I never thought I could make that position. So it worked for me because I saw him as a good tech going in, but I saw him, and I know this is one company that hires from within. So I saw a position where he could be an operations manager once he works his way up the ladder. But in closing, always look at your people, look at them as the leader they are, and see if they're capable of leading the people that are under them, even though they're their peers.
Okay. So, Brandy, what about you? What will be your parting words for today?
Yeah, I would just say there's no right or wrong answer whether you hire internally or externally. Honestly, it's probably best if maybe you do a bit of both. You open up the position and you interview some internal candidates and some external candidates. But one thing we know when I interview for my own company or I interview for other companies, when I ask why someone is leaving their current job, 9 times out of 10, the answer is, well, there was just nowhere to grow. So we need to be looking at our current people and giving them those growth opportunities.
And you know, Brandy, that's one of the key things with Al's stuff. And I'm really looking forward because Al will be at the same event I'm at next week talking about his areas of expertise. But this is one of the things about how do you grow those leaders? How do you grow that janitor up into it, just like Brad talked about? And that's where the org chart comes in and the job descriptions. In other words, if somebody comes to work for you, then where can they grow to? If they're coming in as a janitor, they probably don't want to be the janitor for the rest of their lives. But if I look at it, we have a local, very large grocery chain located nearby here. And it used to be called Food Town, and now it is called Food Lion. And the CEO of this company started, believe it or not, as a stock boy back in high school. And we see this in a lot of companies where people come in and they mature and grow into these positions. And so, what we've got to have is a way for this to happen. And before we go, I want to thank Scott, Sandy, Brad, Sandy again, and Brad again for all your comments today. And I also want to put thanks out to my buddies, Brent McDowell, also Sandy Archer, Braxton Hill, and Debbie Bettendorf, who have all liked and loved our broadcast today. And this is what, this is what it's all about. So if you're listening to us, here's the thing. We broadcast this live, but share out our broadcast. We don't do this to bring business to us. We do this broadcast to share information with the listeners and where they can move to the next level and where they're going to and help them turn their business dreams into their business realities. So this is CBC Success Group. It's myself, Sheryl Eisenhower, Brandy Biswell. And if we can help you, you've got our email contacts right on the screen in front of you. Feel free to reach out to us. We may just have the processes you need to turn your business dreams into your business realities. That's what we're here for. And with that, we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. And it is truly an honor and a privilege